Rental at a Time. We are back with our longest running guest, Mr. Greg Dickerson. How you doing, sir?
Doing great, Michael. Good to see you.
Thank you for taking this. It's awesome that you take these from the road because, again, I know you're a very busy entrepreneur. So giving us an hour on Mondays is greatly appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I enjoy the conversations, and I replay these on the weekends for my channel. So
awesome.
I think everybody gets really good content out of it.
Very cool. Well, hey, one of the things that I guess I did a video on the other day, it really hints at one of the few things that you and I disagree on, or at least we disagree on the impact or maybe the effect. And that is, at what point will interest rates, the rise in interest rates, hurt home values? Right. I think I did a video last week that kind of may have made it sound like I don't think it is ever impacted. But I think we should talk about that because I think you're on record as saying, hey, we get to 4% on the 30-year, prices could fall 10%. That kind of 1% rise, 10% value fall. Am I summarizing your thoughts?
Yeah, a little bit, especially right now. But I watched that video because the conversation with you and the other gentleman was more on the lines of rates do not affect values at all, maybe only volume of transaction and sales. So that's what I got from it, was that you guys were saying that the rates did not affect the values at all, like ever. And then, going back into the history, that was sort of true through the 60s and the 70s that you've been researching lately. Home values continue to rise, even as rates were going up and coming down and things like that. But as we saw 08, 09, and the years afterwards, rates absolutely, decimated prices. I think the real question is, and there's a lot of research out there, are interest rates and values directly correlated or inversely correlated? So as one goes up, the other goes down. So in this arena, so in commercial real estate, absolutely. It's all about net operating income. So the higher the interest rates, the higher the lower the price is going to be, right?
Yeah, the higher the cap, the lower the value. Yep.
Right. So so there's a direct inverse relationship for income producing property. So let's talk about single family residential that you live in. And the 70s and early 80s were a very different time in terms of incomes to values of property and the payments that you could afford. In this day and age, and since 2008 and 9, leading up to the great financial crisis, the values of real estate have been directly inversely related to two things. One, the ability to borrow the money.
Yep.
Two, the interest rates on that money, because it's all about the payment, like you and I have talked about lately. And that's where I get into that, in the last number of years, as rates have gotten down sub 5%, sub 4%, now sub 3%, that really affects the value of what somebody can pay for a property. It doesn't necessarily change the value of the property. It affects what somebody can pay, which affects demand, which affects inventory, which ultimately affects the value.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things I just want to clear up. So I've done a lot of research on the 70s, and I think there's actually three variables. In my world, in residential real estate, because commercial, absolutely right. Higher rates, higher cap rates, lower value. Very simple. But residential, where you live, right? Because you've got to live somewhere, right? It's either owned or you live there, or you own or you rent, right? You don't want to live in your car, generally speaking. So I think there's three things that the 70s taught me in my research, and it's interest rates, value, i.e. payment, but also income. So I think there's three things that I don't think there is a direct correlation of directly just, rise in interest rates and, hurts, rises payment unless people buy. I think there is that third variable of income. And right now, I think we are in an income inflationary period. In fact, I think in the episode 3, we'll talk more about that. But that's the thing. If rates rise at a slower pace than incomes go up, will not affect values, just won't. However, I don't think that's true. I think rates will rise faster than incomes and thus hurt values. But as you said, it is clear as day. It is absolutely, without question, a domino. Interest rates rise, less people get yes answers, inventory builds, the motivated sellers reduce prices and can impact values. But also remember, most sellers don't have to sell. That's another thing that we learned as rates doubled, transactions were cut in half. A lot of people don't have to move, right? There are very few people, right? Death, divorce, job transfer, right? You don't have to sell, right? You want to sell your 1950s, you think it's worth 200, but nobody will give you 200. You just take it off the market. So without question, transactions will reduce.
Yeah.
I do not see prices fall. Their prices are sticky, right? So I don't see any price impact, price equals value anywhere between now and 4%. If it races past 4 and we get to 5 without the adjustment in wages as fast, that could hurt value. So that's what I think. Did that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And in terms of, well, especially this day and age, people are moving less and less. That's why we don't have any inventory on the market, because
Yeah.
people now, with remote work and the world changing in that regard, due to what we've experienced with COVID over the last couple of years, now going into the second year, that environment's changed completely. Whereas even in the 70s, early 80s, and into the 90s, and well, even into the 2000s, there were a lot of companies that would not hire you if you were not willing to relocate.
Correct.
Restaurant industry.
Correct.
If you were going to be a restaurant manager back in the day, you had to be willing to relocate, and that's just what they did. Nowadays people are demanding more flexibility, no requirements to have to go to an office. People don't have to move. So it's becoming, an interesting real estate market from that standpoint, in terms of, like you said, in the market that I grew up in the Outer Banks. I mean, that was the most unmotivated sellers market there is, because they were great income properties.
Yeah.
And people were like, hey, if you'll give me what I want, I'll sell it. But, if I'm not going to get a huge number, I'm not going to sell.
Exactly. So again, I think real estate moves a lot slower. I don't think there's an immediate one-to-one. I know there's a rule of thumb often talked about: 1% rise in interest rates will cause a 10% crash in real estate values. I don't see it. I mean, I looked at the numbers. I get where that rule comes from. I think that only applies in my world is if we move from 4 to 5. I think any movement from 3 to 4 is simply the Fed getting out of the market. It was artificially low, lifetime low. And again, I think incomes are going up enough to adjust from 3 to 4. But if they race higher, which now, Goldman Sachs and others are calling for actual rate rises next year, that could be a problem. We could hurt values. But for me, it'll without question crush transactions. And then the question is, do transactions get crushed in a recession? If they get crushed in a recession, Greg, you could be right, because what will happen is all this whole work from home movement, all of these things, employers could say, hey, that was an experiment. It didn't work. Stop living in Utah, stop living in Boise, come home, or we're going to cut your job, right? You could see that happening. I've worked in that environment. I've had those. I've been that executive over a spreadsheet going, who are we going to cut? I got to cut 10 bodies, right? If we get into a recession and this whole work from home thing, is a boomerang and it comes back, that could hurt value, because then you have a forced and motivated seller. But we're years away from that possibility, I think.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And, again, the keys are being able to borrow the money, and then
Correct.
rates. And, real estate's hyper local, as we always talk about. So all of this is qualified by your market. Not every market's the same, but we're already starting to see in many markets across the country, just because rates have ticked up over 3% again, we're already starting to see sales slow.
Yes.
We're already starting to see pending slow, and we are already starting to see price reductions in a lot of markets that we weren't seeing before. Concessions, things like that. So you're already seeing it now affect values, because we're already seeing price reductions now. What you got to argue, what's value? I mean, the prices were just, if you're asking way more than the market would bear, a month ago, 20, 30%, and then you come back to what the market is that really a price reduction? Is that really a value reduction? So, it has to get deep before you can really say, hey, housing, has corrected. And, to your point, and we've kind of said that all along, you'll see it slow down up to 4%. You get over 4%, it's lights out. You get to 5, it's done. You're just done.
5's the number for me. I think between here and 4 is nothing. Because again, between here and 4, less people can get a yes answer, no question. But we have an inventory problem. If we just take demand from double inventory and it goes to 150%, it doesn't matter. You go from 200% to 100%. Now, I think above 4, certainly 5's the number for me.
Yeah. And that's the key. So everybody watching, watch interest rates, watch inventory levels, watch pending sales, and watch what houses close for based on what the asking price was, that little gap. And that'll give you an indication of what's going on. If all of a sudden you see for sale signs popping up everywhere, you got a problem.
Yeah. For me, the other thing I would tell you to watch is we will have another recession. The business cycle is undefeated. We have expansions and recessions all the time. If we head into a recession, which is actually something I'm starting to see around the corner, that could get very interesting. A recession, higher unemployment, Maybe you have less wage pressure, then rising rates make it less affordable. Then you have price drops, and maybe you have boomeranging, work from home. So lots of stuff to watch, man. It's exciting times. But yeah, that's what I think. Did that help clear up that video?
Yeah, we're on the same page.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, it's 5's the number, man. And again, for me, it's how fast, right? If we got to 5% by say like 2027, probably not an issue because we've had 7 years of wage inflation. We got to 5% by July. It's just not good.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how quickly they raise rates. And, I thought they were going to have to do something this year. And I know a lot of people are calling for them to do something this year, but the year's almost up.
Yeah.
We're going into the holidays. I'm not sure the Fed wants to pull the rug out from anybody right now.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to wait till next year. We're definitely going to see, a little bit of a taper announced at the November, meeting, but that's really insignificant compared to what
it'll be
doing.
like $5 or $10 billion out of 120. It's a drop in the bucket. So
rates are the key. Everybody is seeing that across the board in the financial markets. They understand the danger that this low rate environment has caused and the problems that it's continuing to cause. And you just got to rip the Band-Aid off at some point.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah. The Fed, don't bet against the Fed. The Fed came in and rescued the market. They rained money on everyone. And now we're kind of paying the price. So they got to get out of the market. I've equated it to a party, right? Like a New Year's Eve party. We are past midnight. The people, it's like 2 a.m. and like the DJ's trying to go home and people are still pouring drinks. Like the people that are left, they are hammered. And we just gotta, turn the lights off and, get back to normal. Very cool, Greg. Well, how can people find you and get part of your world?
Yeah. GregDickerson.com. All my info is there. YouTube, podcast. Go check it out.
Thank you, buddy.